The Redmi 9C NFC is one of the cheapest modern smartphones available on the market. However, that is debatable as this model, the 9C NFC, is only available in certain regions of the market, while in others, this phone is marketed as simply the Redmi 9C, thus without the NFC functionality. However, can such a cheap device be worth your while? The Xiaomi Redmi 9C NFC that is the subject of this review is the 64GB and 3GB RAM model, and I paid around $140 for it. I say this because there are a lot of variations for this phone, models that go as low as 32GB with internal storage and just 2GB of RAM. However, the one here is the middle of the pack model with plenty of RAM for web browsing and a bit of video watching, perhaps even some light gaming. We start with the basic, and that means the design. The Redmi 9C NFC looks good, and honestly it looks like any other mid-range Redmi smartphone. It has a 6.53 inches IPS LCD screen at the front with a teardrop type notch on the upper side for the front camera. This screen has a resolution of 720 by 1600 pixels, so not really 1080p, but not that bad either. In terms of color and contrast, all is good on this screen. It would have been brighter, but it's again good enough for what you pay. However, while the screen is good enough, there are some compromises that shouldn't have been made, no matter the cost savings involved. For starters, there is no infrared port on this phone. You know, that nifty little thing that you use to control your TV, AC unit, projector and pretty much everything, yeah, that one is not present on this phone. However, the worst offender of them all is the usage of a micro USB connector instead of the newer and safer USB Type-C connector. As history teaches us, that micro USB connector will damage any cable you use, eventually, because those micro USB clips just do not hold in place forever. Fortunately, this smartphone has a 3.5mm audio jack at the top, which is a rare sight these days as more phones have their audio jack removed and only have one input and output port in the shape of the USB Type-C port. At the back, this phone has a rather nice pattern etched into its plastic casing. This pattern is made to emulate the carbon fiber texture but with a subtle color change. It's nothing to write home about. It's made from plastic, it doesn't feel cheap and it doesn't sound hollow, which is nice for this price point. Still at the back of the phone, we have the main camera of the Redmi 9C NFC. It's a 13MP camera with an aperture of f2.2 and a secondary 2MP camera for the macro mode. This one has an aperture of f2.4. Thankfully, this phone and camera system has an LED flash built in, so low light photos with a flash can be achieved. In addition, the LED flash can be used as an on-demand flashlight. In terms of video, the main 30MP camera can shoot video at a maximum of 1080p and at 30 frames per second. Below the cameras, there is the fingerprint scanner of the phone. It's nothing fancy, you place your finger on it and it will unlock the phone. This is not an instantaneous action. The phone takes about half a second to unlock, but it is reliable and has never failed me so far. The CPU used on the Redmi 9C NFC is a MediaTek Helio G35 octa-core, built on 12nm. The smartphone has a PowerVR GE8320 graphics card and 3GB of RAM as stated in the beginning of this review. In terms of accessories, you really do get the bare minimum. You get a USB charger and a USB cable for charging and data transfer, and the SIM unlock key. And that's it. No earphones, no silicone case for the phone and no additional accessories. In terms of the performance, it's what we expected from such a cheap smartphone. You will not do any heavy gaming on this model. In fact, I'd say you should keep the gaming to a minimum. However, surprisingly, well, not really, as this one has 3GB of RAM after all, the internet browsing and the overall feel of the interface is good. Quite fast and with no slowdowns noticed. The impressive thing with this smartphone is the battery life. With a 5000 mAh battery, the Redmi 9C NFC averaged almost 16 hours of continuous video playback, 15 hours and 42 minutes to be exact, and it also averaged 11 hours with PC Mark turned on. Quite a good result for such a cheap smartphone. For the photo performance during the day, this phone can deliver good photos, however, don't expect a DSLR level of quality if you zoom in on these photos. It's just enough, which seems to be the catchphrase for this entire smartphone review. The colors are good and the contrast is decent, especially in a washed out setting such as a winter with snow. There is also a macro function as previously mentioned and it does work, although the smaller camera results in a lower overall image quality. When we talk about the front camera, things are looking good, no pun intended, with decent contrast and a decent focusing system. And again, don't expect much from it in terms of sharpness, as it's just a 5 megapixel camera with no active flash to help it in low light conditions. But in good lighting, it will work and deliver decent photos. The Xiaomi Redmi 9C NFC is an affordable smartphone that is meant to do the basic things. Don't expect heavy gaming on this device, it won't be capable of such things. Also, the cameras, both the rear and the front, are average at best in low light and good enough in good lighting. The backside of the smartphone is made from plastic, but it is of good quality. It has a fingerprint sensor to unlock it, a notch with a front-facing camera, and it is available in multiple variants with different RAM and internal storage. The best variant for the Xiaomi Redmi 9C NFC if you are on a tight budget is this one, the 3GB RAM model. It's just enough RAM to make your experience with the smartphone smooth, but low enough to keep the pricing down. And if you like this review, then you might consider subscribing for more. And also, if you want to support me in a direct way, then in the description below you will find the links for both the Patreon and the subscriber star pages of this channel.